I am pumped. It's been like a week since I've seen the movie. A movie like this hasn't happened since Blade Runner 2049, which I consider the last great movie that was in the movie theaters. And the reason I do so is because I saw that movie 3 times in the theater. I have not seen a single movie since that multiple times. Top Gun is a movie I'm going to see again. It's on that level, and you know that when a movie has a rewatchability to it, I consider that a great movie in my category of films. The first Top Gun, I didn't see it until, later in my 20s, I think. And then I recently saw it before I saw the sequel. I found that the aerobatic sequences in the fighter jets, they were underwhelming and they were confusing too. When you look at the behind the scenes of what happened, the editors actually took hundreds of hours of footage and amassed what they could for it to make sense.
It was totally confusing because they hadn't really solved the story of in the air.
The story of the flying footage was created in the cutting room.
It was kind of a miracle that the movie worked out. Who they're fighting in the air, what is the objective. There are a lot of things that are unclear that confuse me enough to kind of check out a little bit. There are some instances in the flying sequences of the first one where you can see glimpses of where the sequel will go to. Certain camera angles that show what sequences could really look like and what they would look like over 30 years later. What they get right in Top Gun Maverick is that there is a plot now, and it's essentially a heist film, but they're not stealing something, they're destroying something. It's something that gives a driving force with the plot that the first one needed, this one does have, and it elevates it so much more. The soundtrack is kick-ass still. I mean, I've been listening to it for weeks at this point. The one song to me that is out of place is the one on the beach. Doesn't really fit very well and is uncomparable to the vivaciousness of Playing with the Boys. By the way, that beach sequence of them playing football, which did make me think of Tommy Wiseau.
You throw it this way!
A discrepancy in that beach sequence is all the guys are shirtless, ripped, oiled up, and you notice that all the women are not evenly matched to the sexualization or the eye candy of how the men are portrayed in both the first one and in this one. There needed to be an equal playing field, so to speak, when it comes to both the men and the women and how they're treated visually in that sequence. Top Gun Maverick is doing so well at the box office in a way that hasn't happened in a long time. Deservedly so. The movie deserves its success. It's uncomparative to how Marvel films work, where they have a big-ass opening, and then after a few weeks, it completely just, the numbers drop in earnings. This film is doing something that old school films used to do. It has a steady return over weeks. For example, Titanic was in the movie theater for, I think, more than a year, and it amassed $1 billion worldwide incrementally, not over a period of a few months. And this is something that we're seeing in the first few weeks of Top Gun Maverick. People are going back to it. People are talking about it. And it's a movie that you can be proud to talk about. And it's an experience. It just makes you want to fist pump like Bender at the end of Breakfast Club. Everything was precisely made intentionally. The first one had a chaotic production with what they were filming in the flight sequences. It's the complete opposite, and a lot of it goes to the way that Tom Cruise produced this. When it comes to Tom Cruise, I have conflicted feelings about him. The admittance that he is a great actor, filmmaker, and someone who is so passionate above anyone else when it comes to what he does with his movies, I can't argue with that, and that's something that I do respect him for. But seeing instances when he was on set for Mission Impossible 7 and 8 where he screamed at his employees and threatened their jobs.
I don't ever want to see it again! Ever! And if you don't
don't do it, you're fired. And I see you do it again, you're gone. And anyone on this crew does it. That's it. And you too, and you too, and you. Don't you ever do it again.
I will fuck you up!
I get he was under a lot of pressure. There was a lot riding on that movie when they did the shutdowns and did all that crap. Look, if he wants to reprimand somebody, you do it in private, all right? You don't do that in front of the whole crew. I have been around situations like that, not to that extreme, but in a similar tone. It added to the conflicting feelings that I have when it comes to Tom Cruise. And then, without even mentioning Scientology, that's a whole other thing. That is a whole other thing. The other producer, Jerry Bruckheimer, is a legend of a producer in Hollywood by doing movies like The Rock, Armageddon, Pirates of the Caribbean, Remember the Titans, National Treasure. Bring that third one. Come on, Jerry. Let's get that third one. Come on. Nicolas Cage is aching. I'm aching to steal something. Come on. I'm gonna steal something. The sequel doesn't leech off of the first one in a way that makes you feel icky. The filmmakers don't condescend to you about putting things from the first one or references into the sequel. Anything in Top Gun Maverick that is a reference to the first is built into the plot. It's not gratuitous. It's not trying to pander to you. It's giving you a movie that has a flow to it. And that is something that is so important, because I've noticed a lot of movies like the new Jurassic World film. I noticed that I say, that was a good sequence. That was a good moment right there. Yeah. I like that Velociraptor pulling that guy's arms apart. That was brutal in a way that they had sequences of that in the first Jurassic Park. But everything else is like meandering, condescending with references here and there, and it's unnecessary sequels over and over and over again, purely driven by the fact that they've made money. The difference here, again, is that Tom Cruise waited until it was right, and he did it right. It's a film that I would consider the best film of the year and amongst the greatest action films of all time. The flying sequences in this are untouchable. They stand out so much because of the real-life low flying and passing by of terrain in between bluffs and mountains over them really close, and it showcases the speed that they're going in the best possible way. Who else is going to be able to do something like that? I hope that people, they take this movie as an example of a trend-setting moment in Hollywood and filmmaking where you do things practically more often, because that's something that is so exciting to see on screen. And to know that there's a story behind the practicality of the way that they do things on set. And it translates that reality, that sense of reality, to the actors' performances, to the filmmakers on set. It makes them excited. It makes me excited to talk about it, and that translates to the audience's experience. I think the biggest difference between the first one and this one is that the sequel has heart. It's a movie that's really about Maverick learning to move on from everything he's ever known and become a surrogate father to Rooster, and Rooster is someone looking for catharsis from the death of his father that's been haunting him for so long, and even his mother too, you know? She dies off screen in the movie. There were moments in the film that made me shed tears because there are parallels to real life when it comes to Val Kilmer's struggle with his throat cancer and how they implement that into the movie. Because of his throat cancer, Iceman is not able to speak in the film, and they have a sequence where he's typing to Maverick, to Tom Cruise. That parallel was very close to home when it comes to the last couple years of my ma's life. My mom lost her voice in a different way, but still lost her voice and was only able to communicate through text and through handwritten notes. Should I keep writing them? It's well written. So it was surprisingly a parallel to real life for me. One thing I would recommend is watching the documentary Val, which is a great companion piece before seeing this. First of all, that documentary deserved to be nominated for awards, particularly an Oscar, and it did not. That's a travesty. You will never see a documentary of that caliber about a high-profile A-lister actor and his career, having that he filmed hours and hours and hours over decades of himself and his life. You probably won't see another documentary like that. There's a confidence and proudness about America in the film, but it's not pushing like patriotism onto you in a way that, no, it's just straight up, no, this is strong enlisted men and women that are proud to serve their country, and it's something that is not heavy-handed. It's not trying to push an agenda of any kind, and yet people who say, there's one podcast that I listened to, and they said, even though they said that they loved the movie, they still found this commentary that they had to infect the movie with some interpretation.
As we're talking about this movie, and I love this movie, I can also agree that there are some like not dangerous, but like, do we really need to be telling straight white men, don't think, just do? Is that a message that we really need to be getting out there? Like, is that something that people need to be hearing?
What the fuck does skin shade have to do with this? There are multiple ethnicities on that team, and yet he pinpointed to just, well, I'm going to focus on the white male. That is an automatic negative woke perspective of gratuitous demonization. Thumbs down too for me. When the end of the movie came, I was like, well, yeah, I mean, it happened that way because, it's kind of conventional. But it was a good, like, they did it well. There's some movies that follow plot conventions and they do this because that's what, it's the hero's journey, and this is how this type of genre tells this type of story. It gives me chills thinking about it. Just the moment when they're on the aircraft carrier again, and it's a mirrored sequence of when Iceman and Maverick were saying those cheesy lines of, you can be my wingman anytime. Bullshit, you can be mine. This moment in the sequel is so much more profound, and they stuck the landing on this. This is a great film. It's a great film. And hey, Oscars, you want to do yourself a favor and nominate this movie? Win the crowd.
Here endeth the lesson.
I think I've pretty much done all that I need to do.